Unbroken the Podcast with Madeleine Black. Healing through storytelling.
Hello and welcome to Unbroken the Podcast with me, Madeleine Black, where I am speaking to people with stories that have really come from places of struggle but are now doing great, and actually not just doing great, they are making a difference to other people. Stories that really will heal and motivate and inspire you, because I really believe in the power that comes when we share our stories. And today I'm excited to speak to my guest because I have been a guest on her show. So it's nice to switch chairs for a change. I am interviewing Rachael Welford today. In 2014, her life changed forever. She was bedridden. She couldn't work for a year, and it took her an additional 2 years to get back to functioning. The issue? Depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. The solution? Mastering her mindset, meditation, and self-development. And that's what she teaches now. Welford Wellbeing helps people to stop suffering in silence, move out of their own shadows, and light up their lives in ways they never knew possible. So welcome, Rachael, to the show. How lovely to have you here. How are you?
Thanks for me. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I think it's quite funny sometimes. I think I'm trapped in this little positivity pod, when you think everything that's happening in the world at the moment is pretty dire, and I still feel quite buoyant.
Good thing.
I'm not quite sure how I'm managing it, to be honest.
Well, the very first question that I ask all of my guests is that what does the word unbroken mean to you?
I love that question. I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about that ties into that is around living beyond your labels. And I think for me, Unbroken is really around that, that you can have all these labels, you can experience all this trauma, you can be, I have diagnosis of depression, anxiety, I've had, although now I'm not on the scale anymore, which is awesome, but I had PTSD and all these different things that have happened in my past. And I think you can kind of allow those things to define you and break you. And I've been broken many times, but you can unbreak yourself. You can get past it. You can survive. You can heal. And I think there's a real strength that comes in that. And so for me, I guess Unbroken is about living beyond both your labels and your trauma and coming out the other side stronger.
I love that. That is a beautiful answer. And it's been fascinating getting everybody's response to that question. So thank you. So can we go back to what life was like before you were bedridden in 2014?
Oh, I mean, it was epic. I've been really lucky. I've had such a... It's quite funny, actually, because when I'm in therapy, I'm always like, I'm so lucky. I've had such an amazing life. And then you start going into things and you're like, oh, well, yeah, there was that thing. Oh, yeah, and that one. But I think in between the horrible things that have happened, there's been so much joy and happiness and excitement and adventure. I've always been one of those people who wants to try things. And so I started... I was interested in BMX for a long time. Where I live, it's quite a popular sport. For those who don't know, it's kind of like little bikes that people do.
Funky bikes, aren't they?
Yeah, like stunt bikes, basically. And so from about 12 years old, a lot of my friends were riding BMXs, and I would just hang out with them and watch them and prat around a little bit myself, but I was never on the ramps or anything like that. I was too scared, and pretty overweight as well, to be fair, at that age. And so I kind of got into this environment, and I just thought, wow, this is so exciting. These people are just doing such exciting things. And I was really into music as well. And so I kind of started to build my career around that, and I was very lucky that I managed to land some incredible jobs running some of the biggest events in my field. So, in the UK, this big event, BMX event, the Backyard Jam, that was my event, and working.
So your hobby turned into a job.
Yeah, so I was really lucky, right? Not many people get that. And I got to then work in snowboarding through that, and was traveling the world and getting to snowboard in America and places that I never would have been able to go there on my own if that wasn't my job. So I was very, very lucky, and I really did think I was living my best life. I was in London, I was partying a lot, I had loads of friends around me, I was working really hard, long hours and stuff like that. And I was working in sales, and I'd been headhunted for my last 3 jobs and felt very lucky to work on the brands that I worked with. But I was under a lot of stress with it being sales, and I think I'd always had depression and anxiety, and I just found various coping mechanisms that were pretty unhealthy, to be fair. So mainly used food and alcohol, to an extent recreational drugs, to placate my feelings and to medicate myself, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing. I thought I was just
to numb out a bit, really.
Yeah, I just thought I was living my best life. I was totally unaware, completely asleep. And so, 2014 had this very short, sharp wake-up call of, ringing my mum and just crying and saying something wrong with me. And she's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've been crying for 3 days. I haven't slept. I don't know what to do," and I'd called in sick to work. I think I told them that I had the flu or something, and I just couldn't stop crying. Like, it was just really bad. And from that point, it just kind of imploded, really. And I think...
And do you know where the tears were coming from, or what they felt like?
I was completely numb.
Okay.
I don't even know what...
The numb is still a feeling, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird though, isn't it? I remember literally not feeling anything for about a year, 2 years. It was very strange. Like, you might think that emotions are, especially if you don't have a handle on your emotional health, your emotional well-being, you might feel like, oh God, I wish I didn't have any of these emotions, because then my life would be a lot calmer. But I'm telling you from experience, like, having no emotions is like the weirdest, like the weirdest way to live. Like, I just remember feeling like, one of my friends was asking me to try and describe it, because we were chatting about it, and I said, it's like someone could come up to you and say, I don't know, like your whole family just died in a fire. Like, everyone you care about and everything you care about is just burnt to the ground, and you just go, okay.
So you had really shut down as well, not just numbed out, shut down.
Complete shutdown, yeah. So it was very strange, and I just remember really being scared, if I'm honest. Like, I was really scared. I didn't know. I completely lost my mind. Like,
scared because you couldn't see a way out and you thought you were going to stay stuck like that? Or scared because it was just overwhelming what was going on?
I think I was scared that I was like very, very mentally ill, and that I was going to potentially spend the rest of my life in some kind of institute somewhere. Because I remember like begging my mum, like, please don't section me, please don't, I'm not. And I kept repeating, like, I'm not mad, I'm not mad, I'm not mad. That's what I kept saying, like I was trying to prove something to myself or whatever. And I just remember being terrified, because it's very hard to describe if you've not been there, and it's also quite hard to describe because once you've been there but you come back, it's quite hard to remember, but it's such an extreme space to be in. Like, somebody could have told me that the sky was green and the grass was blue, and I wouldn't have been like, don't be ridiculous, everybody knows it's the other way around. I would have been like, oh my God, I thought it was the other way around. God, like, I didn't trust my own thoughts. I didn't know, like, it was just such shaky ground. Everything was completely off kilter. I felt very disorientated and very confused and scared, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like your own sense of self kind of disappeared.
Absolutely, yeah. It's terrifying. It's really and especially because I'm quite vivacious. I'm quite an outgoing, energetic, people knew me as like a fun, party girl, whatever, and suddenly I was just this absolute shell.
It's a bit of a contrast then, from one extreme to the other.
Absolutely, yeah. It was like a massive seesaw, like just really and it was just terrifying, the whole thing. And I remember, like, I couldn't even answer I was really petrified of my phone. Every time it would ring, I'd like throw it across the room. Like, I couldn't, just really things like that you just think, God, it was a very different time, very different to how it is now.
And so you moved back home to your parents?
Yeah, I had to. I couldn't look after myself. So I was very, very lucky. And this is one of the things that I always feel, I've got a huge support network around me. I'm very lucky. And my family are incredible. And you can't choose your family, can you? So I'm very, very, very lucky that mum came and picked me up, and I remember being really in denial at that point as well, because I kept saying to her, I don't need you, I can look after myself. And she was like, okay, you know, but you could tell she was like,
it's
really
hard though, isn't it? When you're in it, you don't see it often until you've come out of it. It's when we look back, we go, oh wow.
Yeah, and I think it must have been really difficult for them as well, because I was in my 30s, so I wasn't like a little child that needed to be looked after. I was an adult. So I think there was a very interesting line that had to be kind of crossed, in one sense of like, you know, being a parent and being worried about your child, but your child also being an adult in their own right, and having, you know, it's not like I was 7 and it's like, right, this is what we're doing, and you kind of don't have that much choice because you're 7. It was like, so she sort of said, well, why don't I just drive up for a cup of tea? Which was ridiculous because she lives like 70 miles away. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, okay, you can come round for a cup of tea. And obviously as soon as she got there, she's like, come on,
she wanted she wanted to assess you, really, didn't she, and see what was going on.
Yeah, and I'm lucky because I always think that, I'm like, wow, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't have parents like that, for whatever reason, you know, for either they're not able to, or they didn't care, or, you know, whatever. I always feel very, very grateful because I moved in with them for about 3 months, I think I was there, and I was really
stayed
ill.
in bed the whole time, those 3 months. It was hard to get.
Pretty much, yeah. It was it's really, again, it's like you've been switched off. Like, anyone that suffered with depression will probably really resonate with this. It's literally like, even standing up is like such an effort. Like, I can't even,
Your energy's just drained, isn't it? And flat.
yeah. And it's like, the way I describe it is, it's like having a coat on, and the coat is made of sand, and there's like a dripping tap. The depression's like a dripping tap, and this coat just gradually gets heavier, you know, with the weight of the water and the sand, until literally you're just kind of laying there like numb, and I don't even know how else to describe it other than you just can't. And people will say things like, you'll feel better if you just get up and wash your hair, or like,
and you
have you
couldn't
thought
even
about
have
brushing
the
your
energy to
teeth
get out
yet?
of bed.
And it's like, well, yeah, of course I've thought about it. Of course I've thought about brushing my teeth today. But there's 2 flights of stairs to get to the bathroom, you know, and then when I get down there, I've got to get back up again. And like, so yeah, there was lots of things of like, you know, a cup with a toothbrush in it, and you just brush your teeth next to the bed. And like, I don't even know.
It sounds like you were totally wiped out. Emotionally, physically, all your energy was drained.
Everything. I think I'd created a lot of coping mechanisms, almost like a house of cards, and I think it just collapsed. I think there was, you know, a lot of, I was totally not self-aware. I was consistently saying, I'm fine, I can cope, when I couldn't. I wouldn't take help when it was offered.
And we know what fine stands for, don't we? Fucked up, insecure, nervous, and exhausted.
Exactly.
You sound fine. Sorry, listeners, for swearing.
I was all of those things, you know, and I didn't like myself. You know, that's the long and short of it. I really hated myself, actually. And I think a lot of the behaviours that I had, you know, I was harming myself. I didn't realise, it wasn't a conscious choice, but I think I was kind of, you know, on one of 2 scales, either harming myself or escaping from myself. And I think a lot of people feel, you know, because obviously self-harm in terms of the clinical description of it, you know, is different to what I would deem self-harm, because I just think the way that I was behaving, I wouldn't sleep when I was tired, I would eat when I wasn't hungry, I would not eat when I was hungry, I would say that I wasn't stressed when I was. Like, there was just so many things that I was consistently like denying myself, like basic self-care, and drinking too much and not sleeping enough. And, you know, with exercise and things like that, I wouldn't exercise at all, and then I'd get very extreme, and it was almost like a punishment, you know. I'd get exercise to the nth
and it sounds like not tuning in at all to your needs, listening to your body or your mind.
I didn't even know that I had needs, let alone what they were. I was just so out of it. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey going from that.
And also, I guess it's great, as you say, you had your parents supporting you, but it must have been a bit odd to return back home in your 30s.
Oh God, it was awful.
Yeah.
I'm very fierce. Anyone that knows me knows I'm fiercely independent. And so having to kind of slow down, well, stop, was something I'd never done in my whole life. And B, accepting help. Oh God.
And was there a bit of shame that you had to go back home to your parents?
Absolutely. And that whole thing of like, when you're growing up, I mean, to be fair, I've never been one of those women that grew up dreaming about like getting married or having kids, to be honest. But you have ideas, don't you, of like where you might be by a certain time in life. And there I was, 30, what was I, 31, I think 32 maybe, laying in my childhood bedroom, career in tatters that I'd spent 12 years building, and no money in the bank to speak of, no boyfriend, no. You just start thinking like, who are you? How have you managed to spend?
You didn't feel very hopeful at that point.
No, I felt awful. I was like, my life's over. And also I kept thinking like, what if this is it? What if you don't get better? What if this is it now? You live at home and that's it, and you've got this really bad illness and you don't recover, and actually you're just going to be medicated, because I was on various different types of medication at the beginning. You're just going to be this medicated, depressed woman who gets looked after by her parents. What if that's your life?
So what
Terrifying.
what did happen then for you to turn it around and to be this vivacious, energetic, beautiful light that you are now?
Well, I think I've always, to be fair, I've been lucky in the sense I've always been very positive. I was never a very negative person anyway. And when people found out, even people close to me, when I'd be like, I've got depression, they were like, what? What do what? You're like one of the happiest people we know. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, like you can be high functioning depressive, and I didn't know that was a thing. So I guess the first stage was making a decision. And I remember I was watching Louise Hay, who's an incredible teacher. If anyone doesn't know who that is, she's an incredible teacher, founder of Hay House Publishing. I was watching a documentary. I'd kind of got a bit obsessed, I think, into, if you don't want to stay in this bedroom and you want to get better, how are you going to get better? So I started researching,
Okay, so your mind started to kick in a bit.
I think it was a survival mechanism. I think it was a bit like, also I've always, I don't know if I've always been like this, but definitely now I'm very solution focused. I kind of like, feel like you can wallow in your self-pity and whatever, or you can start to take action. And I think something kicked in. I don't know what it was, survival mechanism, whatever, that was like, you need to start to learn about this disease. You need to start to understand what it is, and if there's ways, because by that point, I was on medication, but I didn't feel like it was really working. Like it worked to an extent in it stopped me from wanting to kill myself, which was great. That was a relief. When you're thinking about suicide every day, it's pretty dire space to be in. So I guess potentially with that medication, I had slightly more hopeful thoughts, and I thought, I'm just going to I want to find out everything I can find out about this and see how I can better my position, because I don't want to I can't live in bed like this is a joke. And so I was watching that documentary that she did. I think it's called You Can Heal Your Life.
Yes.
And I remember just having this horrible realization that I was like, I hate myself. I don't even dislike myself. I actively hate myself. And I started becoming very aware, because anyone that's read Louise Hay stuff, it's very much about affirmations and like what you think about yourself. And I started listening to the things that I would say to myself in my head, and I was just horrified at what a bully I was to myself and how horrible I was to myself in my head. And thought,
We
right,
wouldn't speak to other people like that, really, would we?
no.
The negative chatter we say to ourselves.
It was horrendous. Like, ongoing, consistent digging myself out, like you're disgusting, you're fat, you're stupid, nobody likes you, nobody wants you around, the world would be better off if you weren't in it, constant, all day, every day, like this horrible internal, ongoing, just, I don't know, just inner critic, isn't it? It was horrendous. And so then I thought, right, okay, no wonder I don't feel very good about myself, because I don't like myself. So that was the start of the journey. It was like, right, I need to start being nicer to myself. And so I just started working with like affirmations and things like that, and going to therapy. I mean, it's just been what are we now, 6 years of.
But imagine the affirmations must have been hard to start with when you come from such a place of self-loathing, to do any mirror work, or to tell yourself, I am okay, I am likable, I love myself, whatever. What kind of affirmations did you use, and how difficult was that?
Well, I started with the really basic, I love myself, and it was horrendous. I literally physically couldn't say the words. I would look at myself and be like, trying to get the words out, and I couldn't say it. And I was like, wow, this is pretty dire straits. Do you know what I mean? To not be able to even say that to yourself. And so then I started with, I like you. And that was difficult. Now what I recommend to clients, which I didn't know at the time, is I'm learning to like you, or I'm learning to love you. But it was really difficult. I couldn't look at myself in the eye in the mirror, and I couldn't. But I think this is the thing as well, like anyone that's listening to this journey has been tough.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying like you just lay in bed with depression and you start looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I like you, Rachael Welford, you're an amazing human being, and in 3 months you're going to be up and jumping around and like a happy person. That is not what happened. I had to physically throw myself out of bed on days, and I'm not exaggerating. Like I would literally be in my head going, get up, get up, get up, get up, and my body wouldn't move, and then I would literally roll out of bed onto the floor, and I would lay on the floor, and I'd be like, get up, you're going to get up today. I would be like, literally, it's so, I laugh not because it's funny, but it just seems so far removed from like where I am now.
Important to paint an honest picture of what that struggle looked like for you.
It was so hard. And you'd be crying, and then you'd kneel up and you'd be going, come on, and you'd be so angry with yourself, and you'd be beating yourself, you're so pathetic, look at you, can't even stand up, and you'd just be,
you could never win then.
No. It was just horrible. It's a really horrible time when you're like so hard on yourself, and all you're trying to do is get well.
And what are the tears now? Is that the compassion?
I think it's just because you look back now and it's laughable, because I think, God, the days when now
it's laughable, but the tears suggest actually it's not all laughable. There's some real sadness at how you treated yourself.
Yeah, and I just think there's so many other people that are still doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so painful, is like days now when I struggle to get out of bed, it's not like that. Like I just, my struggle is I've pressed snooze 10 times and I'm going to myself, come on babe, you've totally got this, like let's just get up. It doesn't matter that we haven't done a workout.
Well, it's a different attitude, the internal chatter now.
Absolutely. I'm so much kinder to myself. I'm probably one of my biggest cheerleaders, and it's just when you look back, when you go back into how that felt, I just feel so sad for that part of myself.
And that's what I saw, the
because
real
I just think,
sadness.
God, she had it so hard, but a lot of it was, I don't want to say my own making, because I don't believe in blame. I think that doesn't help anything.
You were blinkered and you didn't see what you were doing for a long time, and I think it's been a drip effect.
I didn't have the tools. I did not have the tools that I now have to be able to realise I don't have to believe everything I think, to realise that the brain is incredible, it's totally reprogrammable. And
that's really important to tell people, isn't it, about the neuro pathways, that we actually can change direction of our thoughts, our mindset. It is reprogrammable.
Absolutely. It just takes
Yeah.
practice. And
We have old packages and we need to upload and download all the new packages in our PCs of our mind.
yes, absolutely. And it's totally doable, but it's hard work. And I think that's the problem, is a lot of people are like, you know, we live in this world where lots of things are instant. You
Yes.
know, we can get things instantly. We don't have to save up money. We can get a credit card. We don't have to, you know, hang around in a bar. We can just swipe on an app and we can meet, you know, 1,500 people in a week or whatever, right? And it's like all these things where we get this instant dopamine hit and this instant thing.
Watch a whole series on Netflix without even waiting every week like we used to when we were little.
I know, or binge 10 episodes of your podcast straight away.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, yeah, we can just, everything's instant. Like, we don't have to wait for anything. And so when there's something like your health, we get very frustrated when we don't heal quickly. And, you know, this is what I try and remind my clients. I'm like, they're like, oh, but look at you. And I'm like, I'm 6 years in and this is daily work.
Yes.
This is daily work. I don't wake up still now and go like, oh, I'm happy. Like, I work on my happiness every day. Like, it's a daily thing that I do.
Real process, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Not an overnight fix. Definitely not an overnight fix.
No, but it's awesome as well, because it's like worth the work.
And the tools that you have learned, you now teach other people. So can you talk about all the energy work, all the different types of therapists? I believe at one point Time Out voted you London's best alternative therapist.
I know.
That was very exciting to read. Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah, really nice surprise. And yeah, I mean, I started with energy work. I started with Reiki. That was like my gateway drug, if you like.
Good gateway drug to start with.
Into the world of spirituality. And yeah, just totally blew my mind. I was like, wow, there's this whole other world that we don't know about. And when we don't look after ourselves energetically, it's very difficult for everything else in our life to work out well. And I was not looking after myself energetically before. I'd been doing EFT as a therapy for myself because I had very bad, severe panic attacks.
And for people that don't know that, that's emotional freedom technique.
Yeah, so it's emotional freedom technique.
So it's the tapping, isn't it?
Tapping, emotional acupuncture, they sometimes call it. You don't use needles, we tap instead of to stimulate the acupuncture points, but it's very, very powerful for anxiety, for PTSD, for these kinds of trauma responses that we have. And I'd been using that as a patient, if you like, or a client, and I just thought, this is insane. Yeah. Like, I've gone from literally, you know, I think it was about, might have been 3 or 4 months, you know, I'd gone from literally having panic attacks multiple times a week, of which as well, I didn't realise, you know, like that freeze panic attacks. Like, you think panic attacks are very much the, you know, freaking out, but it was that I had very like, so I didn't even realise that they were panic attacks, some of them. Mm-hmm. And so, but I couldn't leave my house. I'd have literally a panic attack on the stairs trying to leave the house. It would take me like 2.5 hours to try and just walk outside. Like, and I started doing tapping and I was like, this is life changing. This has literally meant I can just leave my house when I want. This is
it kind of interrupts those thoughts, doesn't it?
Because it helps you to reprogram your brain. It helps you to accept where you are, which I think is a really powerful thing. Mm-hmm. I'm totally anti pseudo positivity. Mm-hmm. I'm very against it. I think there's a lot of that happening at the moment of like, fake it till you make it and just pretend everything's fine. And that's, in my opinion, that's not okay. And it's okay to say, I've got very severe depression. I'm having panic attacks. I'm choosing that I'm not going to stay in this space and I'm going to work to get out of this. But right now, there's no point me sitting here being like, I'm so happy, when really I'm like in a really shoddy place, right? And EFT is very much like, even though I'm having panic attacks, I love and accept myself anyway. Mm-hmm. And what I love about that statements that we use in EFT is that it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. You know, you can be happy and be working through trauma. You can be calm and have panic attacks. You can be, you know, I think we're just multifaceted beings, and EFT allows us to tap into that.
And what the other stuff that you do some
Meditation.
sound therapy as well, don't you? Some work with the gongs and
with the gong. So yeah, I do meditation, and part of my meditation, that one of the tools that I love to use in meditation is gong and sound therapy, singing bowls. I think it really helps people to connect quickly to themselves, which can be difficult, especially if you have had trauma and you're dissociated from your body, that kind of thing. It can be quite hard to connect into yourself, and I think sound really helps to do that. I think I look at gong as a incredible teacher. I feel like it always kind of shows you any gaps, any spaces that may be places that need to be healed still, and I think that's a really powerful tool to have. But I guess my main thing that I do is, and this is quite new, so I don't know if you know about this yet, but I've created a system called the Welford Way, and it kind of incorporates all these different elements of all the things that I've learned through my journey, and allows people in a 3-step process to kind of go through a similar journey of like and named it like ABC because it keeps it super simple to remember. And A is for awareness, and I think both of us would agree that, you know, lack of awareness is pretty damaging. That's how I got to this point. And within the awareness piece, obviously there's lots of meditation, journaling work, self, you know, just kind of getting to know the self, like who are you underneath all this stuff. And then B is for brave, and that is boundaries, radical responsibility, acceptance, validation, and values and energy. So really
I like radical responsibility, because it really does come down to responsibility, doesn't it?
It's a horrible thing to do, because the stuff I talk about now, from the place that I'm in now, I know that if I heard me talking when I was in bed with depression, I would have thought I was a real dick. But because I talk about things like this, it's important, right? No offense, no one's coming to save you.
No, they're not.
No one's coming. Like, it sounds really defeatist and a horrible thing to say, but for me it's empowering. Like, if you've got a mental health problem, whatever that is, there's things that you can do if you take responsibility for yourself. And that's I see that as empowering. It's not about finger pointing and blame, like, oh, you're ill and it's your fault. It's not about that. It's about, I've got this thing, this part of self that needs work, and that's my responsibility. And when you take responsibility for that, and you can move forward. But when you stay in that space of, oh, this is all happening to me, and it's not my fault, and I've got this illness and it's completely out of my hands, like, and I get that mentality because I used to be there. But when you can move out of that victim mentality, that blaming other people, it wasn't, you know, I've had a horrendous trauma that I don't talk about publicly, and within that, you know, I could sit here and blame and be like, because that wasn't my fault what happened, but it's not happening now. And I can move on from that if I choose. But sometimes that choice is difficult, and that's the C in the Welford Way, is choice. And I think we don't always realise we've got a choice, because, you know, to say going from depression to choosing to be happy, that's kind of a bit of a joke, really. If you're like bedridden with depression, you can't just go, I'm just going to choose today to be happy. But what you can choose is to get out of bed. And what you can choose is to start being kinder to yourself in your head. And what you can choose is to either get on a wait list or pay for therapy. What you can choose is to reach out to your doctor or a family member or a trusted friend and say, I'm not coping, you know. And so they're your choices.
There are always choices, aren't there? Always.
You know? And it's not always easy, don't get me wrong, like, it's not always easy.
Sometimes we're not really aware that there are choices.
No, absolutely.
We get stuck and we get lost.
That's where we need the ABC. You've got to have awareness first, right? I was so unaware. I used to sit at work and fantasize, trigger warning, sorry for anyone who's you know, suicide trigger warning, but I used to sit at work and literally stare out the window and fantasize about jumping out of the window. And I didn't think what, you know, when you just think how, like, where I am now, if I had that kind of thought, I'd be like, whoa, you need to go and get yourself some support, lady. You're not in a very good place. But it happens so incrementally. Yes. That's how I feel about depression.
Drip by drip, I always call it.
Absolutely, so incremental, and it's so sneaky, and it gets into like all the areas of your life, and then after a while it's just like, oh, this like sludge that like overtakes you, and you don't even realize how bad it's got. And if you've got that level of self-awareness, like now, if I hear myself saying to myself like, you're an idiot, or God, you look tired. You know, that's one everyone must get this at times, right? You look in the mirror in the morning, brushing your teeth, and you're like, God, you look tired, or there's a chin hair or whatever. I literally stand there and I say to myself, take that back.
Yes, good.
And I say, I'm very sorry. I'm sorry that I apologise for saying you look tired today. You are beautiful, just the way that you are.
What a journey you have been on. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Before we end up here today, can I ask you to give a few tips or hints for anyone that's listening that is struggling right now? I know we've had to cover them in your recovery, but just, you know, one thing that really helped you.
I would say the best starting point for anyone is your internal voice.
Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing you can do. Like, even when I was bedridden and laying there and praying to get up, I started with that. And just for neuroplasticity to work, you have to repeat these things a lot.
Yeah. And it's
minimum
attention, isn't it? It's like being a witness or a better detective in your life. Listen to what you tell yourself.
Yeah, minimum 6,000 to 8,000 times a day. Repeat, I like myself, 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 I like myself. What will likely happen is you'll say, I like myself. Your critic will go, no, you don't, you're a piece of shit. And then you'll say, I like myself. And it will go, no, you don't, I like myself. This is never going to work. I like myself. This is ridiculous. I like myself. Why am I doing this? This is, you know, and over time, you know, if you continue, and you end up having these weird arguments with yourself in your head, I like myself, no you don't, yes you do, no you don't, yes you can, come on, we can do this, no you can't, that'll go on for probably 3 months.
It's like exercising in the gym, really, isn't it? We don't get strong overnight, we have to work that muscle, and it's another muscle to work.
Absolutely. And so then over time you'll say it one day and nothing, and it will just be silence. You'll go, I like myself. Oh, I like myself. I like myself. And then you start feeling like, I like myself. And then it starts feeling a bit good. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, amazing. And then you could start, I'm learning to love myself. I'm learning to love myself. I'm learning to love myself, until eventually you'll get to, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. But even when you get to that point, keep doing it. Because what I learned on my journey was, I thought I completed self-development. I was like, oh my God, I'm so healthy. I've quit drinking. I exercise regularly. I'm meditating every day. I'm like, love myself. I feel so good, that I just stopped doing all the good stuff because I thought I'd done it. And it is like going to the gym. If you stop going to the gym and start eating pizza and drinking beer every day, you're going to get,
lose your gains.
Shape again, right?
Yeah.
You lose your gains. So it's really important, even when you get to the point where you go, I like myself, or I love myself, or I'm an incredible human being, and I'm great just the way that I am.
Absolutely. When I used to work as a therapist, and people will say, you know, I can't imagine even getting there. And I just say, well, just add the word yet onto the end of your sentence. I can't imagine getting there yet. Yeah. I would do that one day, you know. Just the way we change how we speak is so important.
So important. So important. And once you imprint these things, what you'll find is everything else in your life starts to fall into place, because of the reticular activating system in the brain, which filters by our beliefs. So if we believe that we're awful and we're not good enough, and you know, all these things, then our life experience is going to reflect that.
Like the lenses that we put on, we see through those lenses.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you and to listen, I forgot to mention your lovely podcast, Things I Wish I Knew. How can they find out more about Rachel? Where can they get you?
Yeah, well, I guess Things I Wish I'd Known podcast, obviously. Madeleine was a guest. Very good episode, a very popular episode actually. You can also find me at Welford Wellbeing, which is WELFORD Wellbeing, on Instagram, Facebook. I have a private Facebook group called Clear Community, and we hang out in there and just kind of share positivity basically. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and yeah, that's kind of how to find me really.
Brilliant. I will add all of that information into the show notes if you didn't catch it there. So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for coming in and brightening up my morning with your positivity bubbles that you bring everywhere. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye.
Unbroken the Podcast with Madeleine Black. Playing now on all the main platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher for Android, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and here. Play Unbroken the Podcast with Madeleine Black.